Hello, and welcome to How to Read Like a Writer. My name is Kristine Kathryn Rusch, and I'll be delivering this lecture. It's one I usually give to my students in craft workshops, and it usually provokes a lot of questions. Unfortunately, you're not going to have the opportunity to ask those questions here. I had discussed a number of the things that I discussed on this lecture in my blog, which is at www.kriswrites.com, K-R-I-S, writes.com, under the Business Rush logo under the title Perfection, and it is from July of 2012. So you should be able to find it in the table of contents for the Business Rush. On that blog and in the comments, I answer a lot of questions that will be discussed in this lecture. Otherwise, you can always come to one of the craft workshops and I will answer you in person. I'm making some assumptions in teaching this class. I have no idea who you are, and I don't know what level you're at as a writer, but I'm going to assume that you already know a lot of the basics. You know what setting is, you know what character is, you know plot, you know storytelling. More importantly, you already know sentence structure, and you already know grammar and spelling. If you're no good at sentence structure, grammar, or spelling, I suggest you take a college class, a remedial English class in those things, and get up to speed before you even really start writing. But if you can do all of that, then this lecture is for you. Some of what I'm going to say in this class will directly contradict everything you've heard from your English teacher, your creative writing professor, the writers who taught you at your writer's workshop, the writers that you hang out with, the writers you read on the blogosphere. What I'm going to teach you here is how writers read, professional writers read. And by professional writer, I mean the writer that has had a long career, not the writer who's sold one or two things, not the writer who's sold one or two novels, sometimes not even a writer who's been at it for 3 to 5 years, if that writer has not made a living at it. I'm kind of snobby about that. I'm snobby about it because I've seen over the years so many writers come and go. Writing isn't really writing. It's storytelling. And the writers who focus just on the words may have a little bit of success from time to time, but they don't have a career. And so we're going to talk a lot about storytelling. We're going to talk a lot about reading. We're going to talk a lot about how all of those things work together. But most of all, we're going to talk about how you can use your reading to improve your writing. That's the point of this class. The first thing we have to discuss here is how the subconscious and the conscious brains work together so that you as a writer can learn the tools that you are acquiring. Now, what I'm talking about with tools is kind of what I talked about at the beginning. Setting, character, plot, all of that. But there's more to it than that. If you've ever seen a craftsman work, if you've ever seen a carpenter work, you realize that they have a toolbox and it's huge. And inside that toolbox are little things that I don't even know the names for. I have to go and ask, what is that tool? And they may only use it once a year. They may only use it once every 5 years, but they need it in their toolbox just in case it comes up. Reading gives you tools for your toolbox. You see how other writers do something, you see how it works, you understand how it improves a certain kind of story, and what you should be doing then is putting that tool in your toolbox and using that tool to improve your writing. This is not a conscious act. This is a subconscious act. You may note the tool consciously. You may say, wow, that guy used a hammer here, and I would never have thought of using a hammer that way. And then you go on and you keep reading. You don't think as you're writing, so-and-so used a hammer in this part of writing, so therefore I should use a hammer right here. It's a subconscious thing. You see that, let's say Stephen King did this really nifty technique in the latest book of his that you read, you acknowledge it, and then you keep reading. 2 years later, you're writing a story, and suddenly you go, how am I going to make this clear to my readers? And bang, that tool you learned, that thing you saw Stephen King do, you go, wow, that fits right here. And you keep going. You just keep writing. It's a communication between the conscious and the subconscious. What you do as a learner is that you're learning, and you look forward and you look at something and you go, wow, and you put it in your conscious brain. It then slides into your subconscious brain. And then you need to trust the process and pull it out as you need it as you're writing. You don't write out of your critical brain, you write out of your subconscious or your creative brain. We'll talk about that a little later on, but I thought you should hear about that right now because you'd understand where I'm coming from. When I'm talking about reading like a writer, I'm not talking about reading critically. I am talking about learning tools. It's a whole different attitude, and it's a very important one. Now, as I'm working here, I'm going to look down on occasion because I'm double checking my notes because I don't want to miss anything for you. And since I don't have the feedback from questions and everything else, I'm occasionally going to miss a point if I don't glance down. So let's talk a little bit about storytelling. Why do I emphasize storytelling? Because that's what we like as human beings. We do everything in story. We talk to each other in story. We use words, but we use them to build stories. We tell stories in our music. We tell stories in our entertainment. We tell all kinds of different stories. Our religions have books that are filled with different anecdotes and stories that help build on each other. Story is exceptionally important to the human condition. And when we say we want to be writers, what we really want to be are storytellers. The best storytellers are entertainers. Our goal as storytellers is to get the reader through whatever we have written quickly and to communicate clearly to them. And then when they're done, we want them to pick up the next story that we've written because they're anticipating it, they like it, and they enjoy it. With luck, they'll do that with all of our work, or at least all of our work of a certain genre.